You folks in the back there, you will get through that line at least by midnight, don't worry. This is the informal, inflexible, improvisational few moments while we wait for that line to get there. So later in my talk tonight, I was going to share a few of these slides. And the first one is to say, you guys have been giving me great accolades for my 7-year history as class president. Now, if you look carefully at that slide, and try and understand it, our participation in both class dues and DCF have declined steadily since I took over. So now we're all about parties and not about giving to the college. All right, now I've got a story I was going to tell during my talk, but I'm going to tell it to you early. Now, as a class, as a group of people, I think we are a group of people that like to compete. And we really do like to win. We're not, you know, ungracious about it. We're not cutthroat about it, but we like to shine. I got one problem. In my entire tenure, 7-year tenure, we have never won Class of the Year award. And the class of 1979 has won it 3 times. So you see that red line up there? That's them. And the green area is us.
But we're going up when they're going down.
We're going down.
Yeah, we might be surviving. I think people are waiting to pay class dues until I step down. So here's our DCF participation, and we're kind of between 40 and maybe 50%.
Oh no!
The 79s crush us.
No!
And you know what? I can't stand that. I cannot abide by that. All right? Yeah, Walter Monquist. That's the last time you marry a 79, isn't it? All right, kids. The message has been steady, and it's being delivered one more time. I personally love being a member of the class of 78. I personally get huge ego boosts from saying we have broken absolute dollar records every reunion year since the 20th reunion. But let's tell the truth. We've done it on the backs of about 3% of our classmates. And I'm thankful for them. And I think it's great that they are so generous toward the college, and that they were so generous to invite all of us to be part of the 1978 class of 1978 Life Science Center. But for the 97% of you, and I'm one of you, it's time to step up, kids. If you want to be a member of this class, I think you've got to at least give a nominal contribution to DCF and to our paying class dues. I'm being serious. I'm breaking bad on us, but that's the truth. There's the data. Now, in the green bars is what we've given over the last 9 years, and our total giving over the last 9 years is about $21.5 million. And the class of 79 can barely scrape up about 14.5, not billion, million. I'm thinking of Steve's hedge fund, sorry. So we blow them away on absolute dollars, but again, you know, it's based on some people that are really generous. It's time for us, everybody, to be a participant in paying class dues and in contributing to DCF. You know, $100 gift, come on. $78. You want to know what $78 was worth back in 1978? 20 bucks. 20 bucks. And if you wanted to deflate it by the cost of education instead of the CPI, the regular deflator, it'd have been like 5 bucks. No economist got that joke. Okay. Anyway.
We can do it.
So, all right, that's my spiel. You can do what you want. I'm leaving tomorrow. Thank God. At this time, I'd like to ask Rick Beyer to come up for a little pre-game message.
How can anybody follow Dave Graham? It's very, very difficult. I'm just here very quickly. Do you want me to ask people about moving your seats? Okay. So I'm not going to do that. So I'm Rick Beyer, and as many of you know, I've spent about the last 12 years working on a project to tell a story about a World War II unit called the Ghost Army. Which amazing unit that used inflatable tanks and sound effects and illusion to fool the Germans on the battlefields of Europe. And I made a documentary about it, co-authored a book about it. And what does this have to do with the class of 1978? Well, Annie Custer, our classmate, and I are spearheading an effort to get a Congressional Gold Medal awarded to this unit. They saved thousands of lives during World War II, but they were not honored because their activities were so top secret. So Annie, who as you know is the 2nd District Congresswoman in New Hampshire, go Annie. Annie has introduced legislation in the House with a Republican co-sponsor, bipartisan legislation to honor the Ghost Army with a Congressional Gold Medal. And companion legislation has been introduced by the Senate, in the Senate. And just to let you know, when I say bipartisan legislation, and I know you probably haven't heard those words together in a while, in the Senate, the originating co-sponsors of this bill include Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts and James Inhofe of Oklahoma. And if there's any other bill in the U.S. Senate that has those two as co-sponsors, I'd like to know what it is. So the reason that I'm bringing this up, and Dave has been gracious to give me 90 seconds here, of which I'm through about 73, is that the Ghost Army soldiers, there were 1,100 of them, there's about 30 left. They came from 45 states. You all come from about 50 states. I am asking, Annie and I are asking, if you are moved at all by this thought, when you go home, to contact your congressman, your senators, and ask them as a constituent to co-sponsor this legislation to award a Congressional Gold Medal for the Ghost Army. It would be great to get our class behind this effort. Annie and I would both appreciate it, and I think the soldiers in the unit and their families and all that would appreciate it. So in our tent, we have some handouts. You can ask me about this. You can ask Annie about this. You can Google Ghost Army Gold Medal. We've started a nonprofit, and we have sample letters on our website that you can write to your congressman. I have used up my time, Dave. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. If you can help us, we appreciate it.
All right. Those of you who were here 4 years ago for our 35th reunion may recall that we had a wonderful presentation on the Friday night dinner delivered by Michael Whitcomb and co-authored by Jim Latin. Now, these two gentlemen are on the West Coast, and they are marketing experts and marketing research experts. And I was delighted to get them involved one more time in an effort to provide a bit of a more lighthearted effort, and Michael's going to take it away. But before he does so, for all you guys out on the end here and here, feel free to pick up your chairs and find the spaces between the serpentine tables if you want to see this presentation. And you're going to want to see not only this one, but the thing that we're going to do following. So please feel free to get up and move chairs and sit in here if you would. Thank you. Michael?
Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm Michael Whitcomb, along with Jim Latin. We're the survey guys. And many of you filled out a survey this spring, and thank you very much. And the survey was about your favorite things in the last 40 years since our graduation. Kind of a best of survey. We wanted to know what are those things you really loved. Now, when Dave asked us to do a survey, he said, look, I want you to keep this thing really light, make it easy. I want shallow, because this is all these people can handle, and definitely no politics. So we got the message. And so what we wanted to really find out is, what are some of the things that really kind of moved you in the last 40 years? And in a way, you know, have you or have we moved much in our tastes and preferences? Now, let me say that this survey was completed by 150 of our classmates, so no doubt, you know, it's not the whole class. There might be a little bias in this thing. Oh, shit. Okay, so anyway, there is a... Jim, where are you, Jim? Okay, oh, yes. I forgot to tell you, I was alerted by campus cybersecurity that this survey was hacked by the Russians. They mistook it for a democratic election. But I really doubt that it's going to, you know, I'm sure it's not going to result in any complications. Oh, great. Oh, good. Now it's in Cyrillic. Great. All right, so never mind. I'm sure that's it. There's nothing more. Let's keep going. So I just want to let you know, what were we asking about in this survey? And you know, we asked about your favorite music, your favorite movies, new technology, the most inspirational people, you know, tech titans, and favorite books, and you know, your favorite presidents, you know, Olympic moments, news sources, changes at Dartmouth, and some thoughts about what you think will happen in the next 10 years. Now, let me say that we don't have time for me to share, you know, all of this. I'm only going to show you a few highlights, but we will post the results on our class website, so you can find it there. So we had a real challenge here, because if you think about it, we wanted to find out what were your favorite, say, movies or books or music for each of the 4 decades since graduation. So think 4 decades, and then you have to say which ones got the critical acclaim, and then, you know, what are all those subcategories we got to make sure we cover, and then, you know, what are some of the, you know, bestsellers and most commercially successful options? How do you know, construct a survey that doesn't have 12,000 options in it? And you know, our response was, you know, very scientific. Fortunately, of course, Jim is on the team, and he said, you know what? We need an algorithm. So, of course, Jim jumped into action here, and his crack team, you know, jumped up on the board and did a ton of work. They came up with a very intuitive, simplistic kind of solution for, you know, how to calculate which movies and books and so on to feature in the survey. And then he did his, you know, scatter plot analysis, which we were sure to make, you know, it has at least 4 colors in it, which is very important. And from that, we were able to get to a manageable list of movies and music that you could choose from for each of the 4 decades. So, with music, apologies to those who really do prefer classical, jazz, or country. For this one, we only asked about pop and rock and that kind of stuff. And so in the 1980s, we gave you a pretty broad sample of successful musical performers to choose from, to ask who was your favorite. Now, you know, so there's Metallica, U2, Michael Jackson, The Police, Prince, Madonna, The Clash, and so on. And one option, of course, I don't like any of these. So let's see who won in the 1980s. Well, coming in first place is U2 with 22%, followed by The Police, 21%, just got edged out. And in third place, I don't like any of these. 1990s, again, another nice cross-section of pop and rock bands that kind of cover the spectrum, including I Don't Like Any of These. And coming in number 1, Dave Matthews Band, followed by our favorite, I Don't Like Any of These, and then the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And then the 2000s, again, some great acts. You know, who wouldn't love these guys? And coming in first place, Norah Jones, 24%, followed by Coldplay at 20%, and I Don't Like Any of These at 15%. And finally, the 2010s, now we're beginning to see Taylor Swift and Bruno Mars and Adele and so on. And coming in first was Adele at 30%, who just edged out I Don't Like Any of These at 29%, and then Bruno Mars at 15%. So, if you look at the pattern for, you know, I Don't Like Any of These, it's a little daunting. You know, it's either second or third in each one of these decades. And this kind of raises the question of, okay, so who do you like? In fact, who are your favorite musical acts of all time? And you gave us a great list, and tied in third place, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Grateful Dead, and Elton John. In second place, we have Bruce Springsteen. And who do you think was the #1 band of all time that you chose? Wait, I'm sorry, who? Right, exactly, the Beatles. You nailed it.
That's great.
So in fact, if you look at all the bands you chose, your absolute favorite bands, and you look at the top 14, what you find is all of them, all of your top 14 bands of all time, launched their commercial careers in the 60s and 70s. Starting with Bob Dylan actually in 59 to Bruce Springsteen in 72, and of course Springsteen came here. So it's kind of striking, isn't it, that we seem to be very much anchored in our time of our youth. You say, why is it that we seem to be in a way stuck in the 60s and 70s, our adolescence, our days at Dartmouth? Well, in a way, the psychologists will say this is an age when our preferences get seeded and locked. And it could be, too, that some of us are just becoming really grumpy. So, what about best movie of all time? What you find is, #1, Casablanca. #2, Wizard of Oz. 3 is The Godfather. 4, Animal House and Gone with the Wind. And #5, Chinatown, The Graduate, Lawrence of Arabia, My Cousin Vinny, Shawshank Redemption, Sound of Music, Star Wars, and Usual Suspects. Now, if you look at that list, does anything strike you? Well, that 10 of the 13 favorite movies of all time came out when we were at Dartmouth or earlier. And in the 70s, it was Godfather, Animal House, Chinatown, and Star Wars. In the 60s, it was Graduate and Lawrence of Arabia. And the 40s, Casablanca, and 1939, Wizard of Oz. So, you also answered questions about what was your favorite movie for each decade. And Jim, said, what if we looked at your favorite movies for the first 3 decades after graduation, could we then predict your favorite movies for the last decade of 2010? Now, it does occur to me that we could just ask you, but that would be too simple. So, what we did is Jim said, well, we'll obviously have to do the double rotational rebounding scatterplot analysis, naturally. And so he plotted all the movies on a map, some sort of map here. I don't know what that is, and And he came up with 3 groups or clusters of classmates who had different preferences for movies. And you'll see in the 1980s, there's the blue group that the favorite movie was Raiders of the Lost Ark. The green group was Chariots of Fire. And the red or orange group there was Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Now, when you look at those groups' preferences for best movies in the 1990s, what you see is the blue group, who loved Raiders, now their favorite movie in the 90s was Silence of the Lambs. The green group, who loved Chariots of Fire, their favorite was Shakespeare in Love in the 1990s. And then the orange group, the Ferris Bueller team, their favorite was Toy Story. And so on. So in the 2000s, the blue group was Lord of the Rings, the green was The Departed, and the red or orange was Harry Potter. So, using Jim's analysis here, we needed to figure out, to predict what your favorite movies would be for the decade of the 2010s. And so he ran the rotational scatter plot analysis, and you can see it worked as it rotated, and it has lines, so it's even better than the one with dots. I was a history major, so I don't know any of this. And so, and what we came up, okay, so it turns out that I guess there's just one movie that all 3 groups thought was the best movie of all, for the 2010s. And let me wait. The Ghost Army. What? Okay. That Putin hacked again. Okay, so no, but actually it makes sense because it's really riveting and fascinating and eye-opening and entertaining. So, in fact, after this dinner, I think we should all order it on Amazon, PBS, or Barnes & Noble. Now, let's talk about technology, some of your favorite innovations. Now, obviously, by definition, if we're talking about innovations after graduation, they can't be rooted in our experience at Dartmouth, except that maybe these innovations solve pain points or problems we had while we were at Dartmouth. So let's take a look at what you chose as your favorite technology innovations. For in the 1980s, your favorite innovations, the top 3, were the Macintosh computer, MRIs, and ATM machines. Now, you think Macintosh computers, why would that resonate for the class of 1978? Well, think about the problem it solves. Crunching numbers. How many bottles of whiteout did we all use to write a term paper? How many hours in Kiewit did we spend running out of paper and all that kind of stuff? So clearly, the Mac really solves that problem. And then we get to the 90s, and favorites were the internet and cell phones. Well, think about when you had to get information back in the day. You had to go to Baker Library, spend half a day going through the card catalogs, then a day and a half in the stacks to find information that you can now get on the internet. And then the 2000s, your favorite technology innovations were GPS, iPhone, Google search, and then finally stem cell research. Well, GPS, what problem would that solve, I wonder? Well, how many of us almost broke up or got divorced over getting lost, with a huge map and, in the middle of nowhere? Well, I think GPS really solves that problem. And then finally, in the year 2010, your favorite innovation was renewable carbon-free energy, followed by the cloud, and then the social media expansion. Now, remember what we were experiencing back in the 70s, which was acid rain. Now, obviously, not so much of an issue anymore, but we have an even bigger one, which is climate change. And it all comes from uncontrolled emissions. And I think one could argue that we really respond to the need for new, renewable, low-carbon energy because of the consequences of uncontrolled emissions. So I'm going to go ahead and say that, you know, acid rain helped sensitize us to that. So I'm going to just speed through a couple more of these things that we asked you about. We asked about the most inspirational figure, and you know, your number one was Nelson Mandela. Number two, the Dalai Lama. And number three, Mother Teresa. And then we asked about who were the most impressive tech titans. Number one, Steve Jobs. Then Bill Gates, number two. And these two really beat out a gaggle of other great tech titans like, you know, Elon Musk, Larry Page and Sergey Brin of Google, and, you know, Jeff Bezos, Branson, Zuckerberg, and Ellison. So, you know, one thing that really struck me, though, of course, is the two that we really loved the most got their start while we were at Dartmouth. So maybe there's something there, who knows. And then finally, favorite president. And coming in fifth position, George H.W. Bush, followed by Bill Clinton in fourth place, then Ronald Reagan in third place, Barack Obama in second place, and what? Dave Graham? What? That Putin? Okay, so, okay. Well, I guess the answer was really Barack Obama. And, but, you know, I think judging from your reaction, maybe Dave was the better choice here. But we have come a long way. But interesting, in this survey, in some ways, we still are very much rooted or grounded from our experience in, you know, at our time at Dartmouth and earlier, in fact. Now, before I, you know, get off the stage here, you know, I think in a way Putin may have been right. That maybe, just maybe, Dave Graham was the best president that we've had since in the years after graduation. And here's a picture, a typical picture of Dave with his feet. And it is a lake house in Washington State, and actually with Chris Hughes's feet right next to his, and his ubiquitous Dartmouth hat right there. When you think about, oh, there's Dave before the pedicure. Yeah, not pretty. And you know, when you think about Dave, what can you say about him? You know, he's a guy who really has a love of the outdoors. He's a man who's absolutely devoted to his family. It's so clear and it's heartwarming. He's a guy who's been married for 34 years, married to Jane. And they've had many wonderful travels around the world together. Makes me very jealous, but so much happiness shared between the two of them. And then his love of the Seattle Sounders. Now, for those of you who may not know, they're really the Manchester United of Southwest Washington State. They're really a terrific, you know, soccer team. And of course, he loves his single malts, and he has his faith. But I think for most of us, when we think of Dave Graham, we think about a guy who has a deep, deep love of Dartmouth and the class of 1978. And there's just so many pictures of Dave with his classmates. And the happiness that he feels being with his classmates is palpable. And you know, from coast to coast, he's traveled to see them and they've come to see him. And it's always a happy thing. And this is so much a part of him. Here he is with the Seattle crew, and I see Barbara Daw flew in for the weekend to be a part of that. Here he is in the last reunion with more of our great classmates and our president. And again, our 35th. And there are frankly hundreds or thousands of pictures, and they all say the same thing, that he is happiest when he's with his family and he's with his classmates. And here we are, of course, a group picture, and he's hidden in there somewhere. And actually, here he is at the top of Mount Mooselock 2 days ago with an intrepid group of 30 or 40 classmates. So what can you say about Dave? You know, he always has Dartmouth. He's always wearing Dartmouth on the top of his head and in his heart. And it really shows. We all can feel it. And what word can we use to summarize what this guy really stands for? And when Jim and I talked about it, for us the word was devotion. That Dave is really devoted to the people he loves, and of course this college and this class. And Dave, you have given us so much. We don't know how to thank you for your leadership, for your friendship, for your devotion. It really has meant so much for us. And you know, you talked about the dollars, and I'm sure that's an issue, but when it comes to participation, engagement, pride, and the joy that we feel coming together as a class, I think you get enormous credit for making that happen. So, all right. Now don't stop, okay? So, how do we thank Dave? Well, we all have our own ways. One thing I wanted to mention was, Barbara Daw told me in passing that she was going to give her annual gift to Dartmouth and the bunkhouse in honor of Dave Graham. And I thought that was a great idea, so I did it too. And I mentioned it to members of the executive team, just a few, and the next thing you know, there are $38,000 in gifts given in the name to honor Dave Graham. So, let me end by saying, Dave, thank you. The class of 78 loves you. And this is about love for an institution and for each other. And let us just one more time give a big thanks to Dave Graham.
Stop, enough. You're not going to say that when I'm done talking in about 45 minutes. Next up, I want to get Charlie Wise up here and a group of people to tell you a little bit more about the bunkhouse and how things are going. Charlie, where are you? There he is. Take it away.
We love you, Dave Graham.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank the 200 or so of you who have given to the Dartmouth College Fund. Thank you to Jody Dietz for organizing that effort. Thanks to the 140 or so of you who have given to the class of 1978 bunkhouse. Thank you to the steering committee. I am not going to name their names in the interest of time. You heard them from Scott Brown last night. Thanks to the Greater Bunkhouse Committee and to a group that has not yet been recognized, about 50 of our classmates who stepped up to make phone calls, to send emails, to touch classmates as personally as they could, to encourage them to take the opportunity to join the bunkhouse community. The class of 1978 bunkhouse will be built. I hope that many of you will mark your calendars for 20 to 26 May of next year. It's the week running up to Memorial Day. This will be the first of 4 weeks. We're calling it the Timber Framing Workshop Week. An opportunity to come and swing a hammer and help actually to raise the class of 1978 bunkhouse at the Mooselock complex. We hope that many of you who have not yet made a gift to the bunkhouse, of course, will do so. I'll be back up here later for just one moment to make that point once again. But right now, I simply want to introduce a lovely video that Rick Beyer, our classmate, has put together. Give it up for Rick. Thank you. About 35 of us, as Scott related yesterday, had the marvelous opportunity to summit Moosilauke yesterday. We were on the summit, more 78s than had been on the summit at one time since probably September of 1974. I did a rough calculation to figure that somewhere between 15 and 20,000 grams of ibuprofen were consumed on the way down, but it doesn't seem that anyone was truly the worse for the wear. After the video, which I think will be a nice Moosilauke-focused video after the truly lovely and heartwarming, professionally done, but great tale of Dartmouth College as told by a number of undergraduates this morning in the Spalding program. Following that, we'll hear a couple of minutes from Doug Phipps, class of 2017, who is the director of first-year trips, and then briefly from our classmate and my fellow steering committee member for the bunkhouse, Lex Bon Bunshu. And then I'll be up here very, very briefly, but for now, please turn your attention to this lovely Moosilauke video that Rick Beyer has put together. Thank you.
From Gurgle and Obergurgle to New Hampshire comes Herr Dr. Wolfgang Schlitz.
Then someone looked up and shouted, there, high up on the cliff, was Doc Benton.
As many times as I have been to Mount Moosilauke over the past 35, 40 years, I would always go down the steps by the Ravine Lodge and then stand below the Ravine Lodge and look up at the mountain. And I remember doing that the first time that I arrived after my freshman trip, and look out on the lawn there and just remember all the memories over the years. And the mountain always sort of calls to me, and I go up it. Of course, I go up a little more slowly than I did decades ago, but I get up there and it really helps me recenter my life.
So my first experience at Moosilauke was during freshman trips. That evening, after the benches and tables were put away, there was Everett Blake, ready to call square dancing. But the salty door rag that I knew was not the same one at Dartmouth. I had to learn the chicken step. Everett was really nice to us all. He started out playing the music nice and slowly. But as the song went on, he played it faster and faster and faster. By the end of the dance, we were practically running to keep up with the music. I'm really not sure whether I was more out of breath doing the salty dog rag or hiking Mount Moosilauke.
Danger of mountain climbing number 1, overstimulant. Travel above timberline is hazardous, subject to climatic changes that are sudden and severe at all seasons.
I have been up there more times in the fog and never seeing the view from the top of Moosilauke than I have seen the view. So I'll just keep on trying, I guess.
What's that? He must be mad, trying to see through the mist with the binocular. It's only a rock cairn. But in his delirium, he takes it for an enemy.
I was climbing the mountain every day when we were on lodge crew, and I had climbed up the Ridge Trail, and it was sort of a foggy, rainy day, kind of miserable. And I was gotten up pretty far, and the wind was blowing, and the fog was blowing through the trees, and I sat on a rock, and I heard something behind me in the woods moving. And I looked around. I couldn't see anything, but I could hear it, and then I could feel it coming closer, and I took off down the mountain. I never made it to the top that day, and I could hear it coming behind me, and I didn't look back, and I ran as fast as I could back down the Ridge Trail all the way to the lodge with Doc Benton in hot pursuit. I still get, my heart still starts going when I think of that. That was a pretty rough afternoon.
Moosilauke has, for me, the memory of Ralph Manuel attempting to teach us how to sing the alma mater and being stunned when everybody in our cohort that night stood up and spontaneously sang it without any tutoring or teaching from him. We had all learned it during the course of our trip, maybe some of us before, but the spirit was really overwhelming and very cool.
I would go up every night and speak to the students, and I would also take the president. I worked with two great presidents at Dunn, John Dickey and John Kennedy, and those were two just unbelievable human beings, and they would speak every year at least once. Just to be in their company was something very special, but to be in their company in the car as I was driving them to Moosilauke was something I look forward to every single year, because we were alone for an hour and could talk about the college and could talk about the important elements of place. And the rest of the time I filled in as the key speaker. My take on it was very simple. If you can go into the woods and climb Mount Moosilauke and work with a group of people to successfully complete a freshman trip, then the rest of it should be a piece of cake for you.
My grandparents started taking my father to Moosilauke for New Year's back in the 1930s. And that tradition continued, and I was a part of revitalizing the Ravine Lodge in the summer of 1975. It had fallen into disrepair and not a great deal of use. And I was recruited, along with our classmate, Wendy Thurber, to work on the crew. We do big hearty breakfasts and big dinners at night. I can remember we put red and white checkered tablecloths and flowers on all the tables. So it's really exciting for me to learn that the class of 1978 is going to be so involved in the new Moosilauke Ravine Lodge. And I know my two boys, Zach and Travis, enjoyed their freshman trips, and I'm excited that we will all be a part of making this available for generations of Dartmouth students and alums to come.
So one of the opportunities afforded to you when you were on the lodge crew was to take care of the basically maintenance issues involving the Ravine Lodge. It had horrible plumbing, and it would, toilets would clog and all sorts of things would happen all the time. You'd end up crawling under these kind of structures with who knows what other animals might have been down there, and deep dark holes with flashlights and whatnot. The spirit of the place is not going to be changed by having a new building. It might just be a lot safer to sleep there.
And back beyond, you see McKinney bunkhouse in the background there. So this is the site for the class of 78 bunkhouse. It will be a two-story structure, about 2,500 square feet. Upper level will be research, lower level will be trail crew. It'll be solar powered.
The opportunity to bring our class together for this bunkhouse project is, to me, an incredible opportunity. Not only will future generations of Dartmouth students benefit from it, but it's brought our class together and continues to bring our class together in an amazing way, just as it first brought our class together in September of 1974. So the mountain still exerts its full and its powerful influence on me and my class.
For here we're good fellows, and the beechwood and the bellows, and the cup is at the lip, in the pledge of fellowship, of fellowship.
everyone. I'm Doug, like Charlie said. I'm a 17. I'm the director of this year's first year trips program, and I'm just here. Thank you. I'm just here to talk a little bit about what the Moosilauke Ravine Lodge means to me and to give you my thanks for contributing so much to the project. It really, it's incredible. When I was in high school, I was really obese. I was from a really obese family. When I was 16 years old, I decided I needed to get my act together, and I lost 100 pounds over 2 years. Thank you. But those 100 pounds didn't carry with it this sense of shame and kind of like bad feeling about myself. That stayed with me until my freshman trip. And the first few days of my freshman trip were fine. They were unremarkable. And then I got to the Moosilauke Ravine Lodge, and I will never forget, there was just this unbelievable energy of that combined both feeling welcome and challenge. It made me feel so incredibly comfortable and yet challenged me to do new things and try new things. I remember sitting on the leash field meeting all of my classmates so energetically, doing square dancing for the first time. I had no idea that was a thing that people did. And then I will never forget the lodge crew presented the opportunity to sunrise Moosilauke the next morning, and my first reaction was, I would never ever choose to do that. Why would I do that? And 2 minutes later I was like, that's the whole point. I'm gonna do it. What the hell? And so I did it, and all of a sudden, all this kind of like shame that I'd been feeling about myself was this feeling of triumph and accomplishment, and kind of like Ralph Manuel said in that video, it's like once you do that, the rest is a piece of cake. So that's kind of how I felt since then. I felt like that was just a huge weight lifted off my shoulders, and for me, Moosilauke has that incredible energy of making me feel welcome and challenged at the same time. And I really, really appreciate all the effort you have all put into contributing another bunkhouse to the lodge. It's going to be a really, really incredible complex. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Charlie.
Doug, thank you. In the moment before Lex Von Bunchu gets up here, just two very quick points. First of all, to all of you who have enjoyed the Moosilauke Saison beer that had brewed by Liar's Bench Portsmouth, thank you. We kicked the keg, but there's another going on at the tent from 10:30. In addition to that, we now have Lex Von Bunchu. Lex, go ahead.
My light. Sorry. Good evening, everybody. Good evening.
Lex, put it down. There you go. Hear you.
Good evening.
Yeah.
I had never been hiking before I came to Dartmouth.
Really?
Yes, really. Never.
Really?
Didn't even know hiking was before I got there. But I'm trying to rush through this. First year trips, which we knew as freshman trips, introduced you.
Charlie, fix the mic.
First year trips. Yes, first year trips, which we knew as freshman trips, was my introduction to something I deeply love. I was on a short trip, but the last day, we hiked up and over Moosilauke to the Ravine Lodge, where we ate green eggs and ham, learned the alma mater, and yes, did the salty dog rag.
Chicken stab.
The chicken stab, yes. During college, I was involved with the Dartmouth Outing Club, including Cabin and Trail, where I spent most weekends away from campus, hiking, taking care of cabins, and working on trails. I was also involved in winter sports. My husband, Pete, and I had our first date at the Dartmouth Outing Club house, where he had been invited to show a slideshow to the class of 1926 about the Dartmouth Outing Club. During my sophomore and junior years, I led the same freshman trip that I had taken as a freshman. I also went on a bio program as well as did foreign study in France. Fortunately, I was able to spend 3 additional years in Hanover as I went to the medical school. I graduated from the med school in 1981 and left Hanover. Since that time, I have not been involved with our class or the college really at all. Pete and I have returned to reunions from year to year, from time to time, but the highlight was always going to the Moosilauke Ravine Lodge. And not always the highlight, staying in those bunkhouses, which were warm and getting quite old. Why would I, someone who had not been involved in the college or class for years, someone who really did not feel part of the Dartmouth community, get involved with the class of 1978 bunkhouse at Moosilauke? Last summer, a friend called. We discussed the prospect of our class building a bunkhouse, the last bunkhouse to be built at the Ravine Lodge. I was quite interested in the project, but what really excited me was the desire to have this be an all-inclusive project, recognizing everyone involved. Being on the bunkhouse steering committee has been truly satisfying. I again feel connected with our class and the college. I invite all of you to join me in this endeavor, become part of the community that builds our class bunkhouse. Thank you.
Lex, thank you very much. Some of you who were at Moosilauke the other day heard me say, please simply give until it feels good. And only you know what that is, and it may not be for everybody, but we are looking to have a huge participation. We've recently passed 200 classmate donors. That's phenomenal. We are above $950,000 towards a $1.1 million goal, which is all of the construction cost plus the critical endowment, which will ensure that the class of 1978 bunkhouse and the other elements of the new Ravine Lodge complex will never be denied what they need to last the 200-year life for which they are being built. That means that every single class of 78 who donates however small, however large amount to make the bunkhouse happen, and or comes to Moosilauke to swing a hammer to help build it, will have his or her name on a board of recognition plaque, 2 of them, one on the first floor and one on the second floor. Imagine that your great-grandchild comes to Dartmouth and sees your name on the class of 1978 bunkhouse. I can assure you, without being crass, that there is no cheaper, quicker buy-in to that kind of recognition. But apart from that, Moosilauke is an extraordinary and unique place of a phenomenal institution. We are part of it. Whether Moosilauke is at the core of your experience or not, it is intrinsic to the entry point of 90% of incoming Dartmouth students. 90% who participate in first-year trips spend a day and a night at Moosilauke before they actually check into their freshman dorm. I like the idea of those generations of Dartmouth students and Dartmouth families seeing class of 1978 on a bunkhouse, which will be a critical piece of the new Ravine Lodge complex. And I urge you all, again, to participate in whatever way that you can. Give until it feels good. Come swing a hammer next May, or June, or July, or August. We will be sending word out on these opportunities to help come build it. That's it for me and tonight and the bunkhouse celebration. Thank you all very much.
I'd like to have Barb Kelly-Hack, Charlie Allison, Steve Pasakis, and Keith McCrae come on up. There are about 40 other folks, or 35 other folks, that have helped contribute to this weekend's reunion. And I was going to read off their names, but I'm afraid I think we're going to be out of time here in about a few short minutes. So if you had any problems this weekend, if you had any concerns, come and see me right over there. I think we can take care of it. And but if you really liked what you're doing here, and these folks, where's Barb? There she is. Where's Charlie? Come on, get up here. Please give them a round of applause and a standing ovation for a lot of time and effort. All right, go ahead and sit down. All right, I've been planning this talk for about 2 years. I think 7 years as class president has entitled me to about 20 minutes of your time. Of course, in about 5 minutes, the fireworks are going to start, in which case my entire ambitions in life will be shot down terribly. All right. I'm required by safe harbor rules to offer the following disclaimer. The comments I'm about to make are solely my own. They are not in any way endorsed by your class officers, and most certainly not by the college. There are both forward and backward-looking statements. As such, they are reflections, recollections, predictions, projections, and ambitions, and therefore are neither truthful nor accurate. Before I really get going, I want to tell you that there are 4 things that you should know about me. Number 1, I'm a man of a million ideas and no follow-through. Number 2, I hate trite phrases. The one that drives me the craziest is on social media when people have problems and other friends say, "My thoughts and prayers are with you." The next one is, "It's been an honor and a privilege to serve you." So the next 20 minutes is my attempt to elaborate on, it's been an honor and a privilege to serve you. Number 3, I am a social entrepreneur. That means I take risks and say things typically not said in public forums, or even in polite company generally. So, Passaic boys, it's time for you to go home. Finally, I am a lucky man. I'll elaborate in a bit. As I said, I've given this talk 1,000 times in my head. Unfortunately, I've given 1,000 different versions, so I'm not sure which one you're going to get tonight. Let's get warmed up with a little audience participation. I'm going to ask some questions. Some of them are directed to classmates. Some of them are directed to the entire audience. I would really like to see a show of hands and be honest. How many of you are here at a Dartmouth 1978 reunion for the first time? Show me your hands. That in itself does my heart good. Thank you. How many of you don't drink alcohol anymore? Oh, I see 1, I see 2, I see 3. Well, now he was a kid. All right, where's Spear? Oh, there he is, thank you. How many of you never drank when you were here at Dartmouth? Oh, we got 1, we got 2, we got, oh, there we go, 3. That's good. How many of you would like a do-over? How many would like to come back as a Dartmouth student? Oh, okay, that's better. Geez, you're not brain dead. All right. Random questions. How many have ever run a marathon before? How many ever run the Boston Marathon? Oh, that's pretty good. How many here have served on a school board or a PTA? All right. Pretty impressive. How many of you have climbed Mount Rainier in the state of Washington? Oh, there's 1. Chris! Where's Chris? Where is she? There she is. How many have climbed Mount Whitney? Oh, there she is again. And last but not least, how many of you have climbed Mount Kilimanjaro? Oh my God, Chris Simpson Brett, you're a goddess. How many of you have cared for an aging parent? All right. How many of you were arrested or nearly arrested for something other than a moving violation when you were here at Dartmouth? I see one, I see two, three. Oh, that's good. Honesty, that's good. So goes those political careers. How many of you were nearly arrested for indecent exposure for skinny dipping at the Norwich pool? Only me? Only me? Oh, come on. All right, last question. And you got to answer this one, and you got to answer it truthfully. How many of you had sex for the first time at Dartmouth College? I see one. I see two. I see a few. All right, now the second question is, how many of you had sex with another person at Dartmouth College? All right. I want to look back, I want to take stock, I want to look ahead a little bit. I also want to offer a few pearls of wisdom that I've gleaned since my days here in the late 70s. Now, regarding wisdom, they say that with age comes wisdom and hemorrhoids. And I got good news and bad news. I see a lot of wisdom out there, and I see more than a few of you shifting uncomfortably in your seat. Wisdom pearl number one, I learned right my first year after Dartmouth. I was working at a bank in Tennessee. I go out after work with a coworker. We go to a little dive bar in downtown Nashville, order some beers. The waitress brings them over, plops the bottles down in front of us, and he has that kind of half smile, long week, anticipation, and he looks at it and he says, and this is a real pearl of wisdom now, he says, I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a prefrontal lobotomy. Why Carpe D78? Most of you have seen the logo on all our stuff, and by the way, there are coffee mugs on the table. You're to take those. Those are in recognition of the money that I know you're going to contribute to the Class of 78 bunkhouse. I'm kind of standing here tonight though, gang, because our go-to reunion speaker for the last few reunions, beloved classmate and friend Mark Farley, is not with us anymore. Mark's life was celebrated about 18 months ago with a mini reunion here on campus where we dedicated a rowing shell in his honor. But his early and untimely death serves notice to us all that we are running out of runway. The finish line is closer than the starting blocks, but most of us still feel young and active and engaged. But as Forrest Gump says, it happens. I figure we got 10 or 15 years before we lose any opportunity to continue building the camaraderie and the great spirit of this accomplished and generous group of people. Do we have any cancer survivors here tonight? Raise your hand. Some of you know, but many of you probably don't, that I was diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma 18 months ago. I had a a beer pong ball-sized tumor taken out of my head. Which leads me to my next pearl of wisdom. Use your sunscreen. Tell your kids to use their sunscreen, and by God, make sure your grandkids use their sunscreen. Thanks to the miracles of modern medicine, I'm doing just fine, and I expect to be around here for a long time. But the wake-up call was a diagnosis. The wake-up call, was eye-opening, or it was like getting hit in the face with the shovel of mortality. One last point on this topic. Who amongst you knew our classmate Pam Daniels, or Pam Daniels Drumheller? Raise your hand. I'm sure not a lot of you knew her. She wasn't that wildly active, but she was a warm, friendly, and spirited young woman. She had a ready smile and an engaging personality. I got introduced to her before we both landed at Dartmouth. We were from the same area in Western Massachusetts. We both got admitted early decision, and we came up here together in the spring of '74 to check out the college. I didn't see Pam after graduation. I always thought about her, occasionally, but I always held out the hope that we'd reconnect. I did find her on Facebook a few years back, but she wasn't a very big user. And when I got my diagnosis, I actually posted something about it, and she wrote me a separate email, and I'm going to read you a brief snippet from it. It said, "Really sorry to hear about your health issues, but I think we may be in a position to help one another. I was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer last March, and everyone is still surprised that I'm alive. I look pretty damn good as well, if I say so myself, especially if you happen to like bald girls. I completely get your admonishment against the sickening "my thoughts and prayers are with you" phrase. I may have to chop somebody in the earlobe the next time I hear that. I was so excited to get her email that I responded very quickly and sent her an even longer and personal email. But for whatever reason, she never got back to me. And this past January, 13 months later, she passed away. So, wisdom pearl number 3 is, life is just a series of missed opportunities. And that somewhat tongue-in-cheek phrase is a comment and a truism of mine, and addresses all those woulda, coulda, shoulda moments that we all have in our life. It captures my disappointment at losing a potential friend like Pam Daniels Drumheller, but it can also be applied lightheartedly to the facts of, like, why didn't I buy Microsoft in 1986? Or why did the Seahawks throw a pass with 26 seconds to go 3 years ago?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now let's get serious. Wisdom pearl number 4. There's a lot more randomness and luck involved in life than I thought there was in 1978. Back then, I was the captain of my own ship. Pardon the Seinfeld reference. I expected to go as far as my talent and hard work would carry me. Of course, I was neither talented nor hardworking, at least compared to most of you, but I was interested in the burgeoning field of entrepreneurship and biotechnology. I had an okay career and started a few companies, but none of which really struck gold. That doesn't matter. Now I really want to get serious. A few newsletters back, I wrote a president's message, and I know that I do have 2 or 3 loyal readers because they've come up to me this weekend and mentioned my last president's message, but not this one. So this is where I really do get serious. I want to address 3 groups of classmates, and I'm having trouble seeing, so forgive me. First, to the women of our class. And again, I'm talking, it's not the royal we. Well, I didn't make it easy for you. I bought into the tradition of old Dartmouth. I didn't want you in my all-boys treehouse or club. Now, I didn't personally object to you being here. In fact, some of you were gracious or desperate enough to date me once. But I didn't call it out when my brethren were obnoxiously sexist and egregiously annoying. So I thank you for your perseverance, and I think that the young ladies of Dartmouth today have a lot to thank you for. Next, to my black and minority classmates, this place must have been culture shock squared for you. My interactions with you were sorely limited. But I do have one fond memory to share. Freshman fall term, the morning river fog giving way to those hazy sunny days, the trees turning. I used to get up early and trudge from Wheeler over to Thayer for breakfast and then back over to Dartmouth Hall for an 8 a.m. French drill class. And while there, I got to meet two classmates. One was a fellow by the name of Rich Costa, who I'm sure that almost none of you know. And the other was Sterling Edmonds. How many of you know Sterling Edmonds? He was the nicest guy. He was the nicest 6'10" guy, built like a stick, from Chesapeake, Virginia. And I really enjoyed getting to know him as we walked together, you know, that fall from drill over to Calc 5. But I never really found another way to connect with him, or frankly other members of, you know, the black community. So that's on me. I can look back now and I can say, I missed an opportunity, and I'm sorry for that. I didn't have, you know, the capability or the context to be able to do that. Looking forward, I ask that our class and our class leadership continue to find ways to reach out and make sure that the class of 1978 is open to all. All right, the fifth pearl of wisdom, and there's only 6, so we're getting close to the end. There's such a thing as knowing something intellectually with your head, but really knowing it emotionally with your heart and soul. And the best example I can describe about that is 39 years ago, Ron Andrews. Where's Ron? Stand up, Ron, show me. All right, Ron's here somewhere. Anyway, some of you might remember that Ron gave a most thoughtful and eloquent address at Senior Day about the challenges of being a minority amongst the Dartmouth campus. And you know what? I remember thinking that I got it here, but I couldn't get it here. I just couldn't, you know? And I look back now and I realize I couldn't get it here. So, and we all know, you know, sometimes we can get things rationally, but until you get it here, you don't really get it. Lastly, to my LGBTQ classmates, I can't even begin to imagine how difficult Dartmouth must have been for you. We buried you in the closet, and we barricaded the doors and nailed it shut with our homophobic slurs and insults. Dartmouth may not have been dramatically different than society as a whole, but our brand of testosterone-charged machoism led to an unusually strong streak of homophobia. However, I am glad that Steve Strauss from our class informally reached out to many of our gay members, and if you're here this weekend, I hope you have a fabulous time, and I'm delighted to have you here. So, to members of all 3 groups, the lens of time has offered me the opportunity to look back and realize that I fell woefully short. I look forward and I want our class to be more than who I was. You know, what I forgot to mention was I realize now that I am a lucky man. And I'm a lucky man because I won the genetic lottery for the mid-20th century America. I am, as you can see, a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male and straight. Okay? I know that now. You don't pay enough taxes. Yeah, I don't pay enough taxes. Thanks, Steve. All right. To that end, I am extremely pleased to announce that at tomorrow morning's class meeting at 9:45, and if you can be there, please join us, that we will nominate and heartily endorse as our next class president, Barbie Snyder Martinez. All right, let's try and wrap this up quickly. I showed you earlier some of those slides showing that we don't do as well as the 79s, but let me talk about other aspects of engagement that I think we can take pride in. We've got a Facebook group, which is a closed group, which means that only we can see what is posted in the group, we and the NSA and the Russian military, but 320 members, include spouses and a few widows. And I know that not everybody uses social media, but it has been a great tool and a great blessing to me. I've gotten to know so many more of you, and I'm thankful for that. Email open rates. Brooks Clark is our email iModules e-blaster extraordinaire. We have 785 good emails out of 985 classmates, and he tells me that we get 40 to 55% open rates for every email we send out. Finally, and this is special, for the second reunion in a row, we've offered angel and scholarship pricing. Angels pay more, and scholarship people pay a little less than the base rate, This year, we've had 50 classmates and guests pay the angel rate versus 22 classmates and guests that asked for the subsidy. I think that's a fantastic testimony and testament to our collective interest in making sure that every member of the class of 78 joins us. All right, the home stretch. The final pearl of wisdom. It took me until about 2 or 3 years ago to realize this. Here it is. A person's wealth is not measured by the size of their bank account, but rather by the breadth and depth of their friendships. Ladies and gentlemen, I am indeed a lucky man, and it has been amongst my greatest privileges to be a member of this class and to be your class president. There are so many of you that I've really enjoyed getting to know these past 7 years that I didn't know back in the day. And you've been kind enough to put up with me. But I will thank you privately and hope that more of these relationships will evolve. And I hope that the rest of you, besides seeing old friends here this weekend, will look back and find one moment where you met a new classmate and made a new friendship. To all of you, my Dartmouth brothers and sisters, I thank God that I was allowed into this college and this accomplished and generous class. You have enriched my life beyond measure, but time is diminishing. It is a limited resource for us, and one that will shrink at an ever-increasing pace. So grab a glass and let's toast. To old friends and to new ones, and to those we have yet to make, may the bonds of friendship continue to expand and strengthen. Carpe D78. Thank you.
Bravo!
What's that? Yes.